Hello coders, welcome back to our Smart Introduce YouTube channel. In this video, we'll be solving Codechef Starters 213 problems. Without any further delay, let's get started. So let's read the first problem statement. The Actionites are preparing for the 2025 edition of their annual event named 𝗥𝗲𝗃. So after a long day of work, they go to a canteen to buy the refreshments. So at the canteen, chef is selling n pizzas, but however the Actionites require only k pizzas. So from this we can come to a conclusion that in the canteen there is a person named chef who is selling n pizzas, but these people require only k pizzas, but the Actionites requires only k pizzas. So next, so each pizza cost r rupees. So each pizza one pizza cost r rupees. So now chef wants to know, after selling k pizzas to the Actionites, how much revenue can he obtain by selling all his remaining pizzas. So that means after selling these k pizzas, this person wants to know how much revenue he can earn by selling the remaining number of pizzas. So if we are having total number of pizzas are n, and if he's already sold k pizzas to Actionites, the remaining number of pizzas will be n minus k. So basically here we want to know how much revenue will chef earn by selling n minus k pizzas if each pizza is costing r rupees. So let's look at the input format. So the first and only line of input contains three space separated integers n, k and r, and we already know what is n, what is k and what is r. So what is n? N is nothing but number of pizzas chef is selling, and k is number of pizzas the Actionites require, and r is the cost of each pizza. So input format is clear. So let's look at the output format. So output format is saying that we need to print a single integer which denotes the amount of money which chef can earn by selling the remaining number of pizzas. So let's understand the sample input. So in the first input it is mentioned 10, 6 and 15, and if you observe, if you compare this with the sample input, this 10 is nothing but n, this 6 is nothing but k, and this 15 is nothing but r. So now what is our agenda? So chef is having 10 pizzas, and out of which 6 pizzas are brought by Actionites. So the remaining number of pizzas are 4. And now we need to find how much money will chef earn, how much revenue will chef earn by selling these 4 pizzas. So each pizza cost is 15. So he has 4 remaining pizzas. So the total amount which chef will be earning is 4 into r, which is 4 into 15, which is 60. That is how we got 60. So now I recommend you to pause the video, understand the question and understand this logic, and try to convert this logic into code. So let's try to code it up. So first let's read the input. So we know that the first and only line of input contains 3 integers, which is n, k and r. So int n equal to s dot nextInt, and we have k and we have r. So after reading 3 inputs, what we need to do? We need to process our main logic. What is our logic? So number of pizzas remaining is, so remaining pizzas is nothing but n minus k, and cost of these n minus k pizzas is nothing but remaining into r, and at the end we need to print the cost of the remaining pizzas. which denotes the number of, so which denotes this thing, which denotes the output format. So let's try to run. So we got output as 60. So let's submit. Accepted. Let's move to the next question. So let's read the problem statement. There is a 𝗟𝗃𝗃𝗃 race. So there are n AI driven cars which are labeled from 1 to n and they are racing on a circular track. So the race was going well until some cars crashed into each other. So as a result of which all the cars got damaged and stopped working in the middle of the race. So the external committee has to declare a winner regardless of the crashes. So they were able to obtain 2 measurements for each car. So for each car they were able to have 2 measurements. The first one is total distance traveled in meters, and the second thing is the time in seconds. So now let's continue reading the problem statement. So for the ith car, these are represented by the values di and ti respectively, and it is guaranteed that di is a multiple of ti. That means this d of for each car is a multiple of this t, and the committee has decided to simply declare the fastest car to be the winner. So here, who is the winner? The winner is nothing but the fastest car. The winner is the fastest car. So our task is to determine the fastest car and output its label. So if the 4th car is the fastest car, we need to print the label as 4. And we know that cars are labeled from 1 to n. And we may assume that each car travels at a constant speed. So it is also mentioned that the speed of each car is constant. And if there are multiple fastest cars, report the one among them with the minimum label. So that means, let's say I have 3 cars, which is 3, 7 and 9, which are all the 3 are winners. So in this case I need to print this 3 as the output because this car is having the minimum label. So let's look at the input format. So the first line of input contains a single integer t denoting the number of test cases. So the first line contains t, and each test case contains multiple lines of input. So for each test case, this is given as the input. The first line of each test case contains a single integer n, which denotes the number of cars. The next n lines describe the measurements of the cars. The ith line contains 2 space separated integers di and ti denoting the distance traveled and time taken by ith car. So let's look at the input and understand it more better. So the first line is 5, which denotes the 5 test cases, and the next line contains n, which is denoted as the labels of the car. There are two cars. So this is the first car and this is the second car. So this entire thing is a test case 1, and test case 1, this is test case 2, and next we have 4 cars, test case 3, next only 1 car, and next 7 cars. So in total we have 5 test cases and we need to print 5 things in the output. So here, so let's look at the third test case. So we have 3 cars where n is 3, and the first car is traveled 15 meters in 5 seconds, second car traveled 10 meters in 5 seconds, and third car traveled 20 meters in 5 seconds. And we know that if this is d and if this is I, sorry, if this is D and if this is T, we know that this T will be divisible by D. That means D will be multiple of T. D is a multiple of T. And how do we calculate the speed? Speed is nothing but distance by time. So distance by time we will get here is 3. Next we get 2. Next we get 4. So among these three things, the first car speed is 3 meter per second. Second car speed is 2 meter per second. And third car speed is 4 meter per second. So among first, second and third cars, which car is the speediest car? The third car, right? So the third car is the speediest car. So we need to print 3 as my output. And if you look at the test case 4, what is the speed of this car? 6 by 6 we get it as 1, and next 12 by 4 we get it as 3, next 8 by 4 we get it as 2, and 18 by 6 we get it as 3. So now if you observe, we have 4 speeds. So let's write it here. We have 4 speeds, which is 1, 3, 2 and 3. So this is the first car speed, this is first car, second car, third car and fourth car. Now among these 4 cars, if you observe, we have 2 speedest cars, right? We have this as my speedest car and we also have this as my speedest car. Now in this case, what we need to do? What we need to print? Shall we print both, or shall we print 2, or shall we print 4? So here if you observe, if you remember, in the output format it is mentioned that if there are multiple fastest cars, we need to report the car with the minimum label. That means we need to print 2 as my output. That is why I got 2 here in the output. And for the second test case, we got 3 here, and same thing we also got 3 here. For third test case we got 2 and we also got 2 here. So I hope everyone is clear with the input format, the sample input output and the logic. So now I want you to pause the video, understand the logic and try to convert this logic into code. So let's code the question. Let's read the input. The first line of input contains T, which denotes the number of test cases, and for every test case we need to iterate. So let's loop for T times, and for every test case what we need to read in the first line? The first line denotes n, which is nothing but the number of cars. So the first line denotes the number of cars and followed by n lines. So let's loop for n times. Starting I from 1, because if you remember, the cars are labeled from 1 to n, right? So let's start our I from 1. And every time we need to read 2 values. So what does this 12 denote? 12 is nothing but distance and this 3 is nothing but time. So distance equal to s dot nextend and int time equal to s dot nextend. And now we need to calculate the speed, right? So how do we calculate the speed? Straightforward, distance by time. Now after finding the speed, what we need to do? We need to compare this speed with the winner speed, right? So let's compare, let's have a variable which denotes the winner speed. So initially let's assume the winner speed is 0. I am assuming that the winner speed is 0. So now I'll compare the current speed with the winner speed. If the current speed is greater than the winner speed, then I'll update my winner speed as current speed. That's it. And what should we print at the end? Should we print the winner speed? No, right? We need to print the label of the winner car. So I'll assume my label is 0. And whenever I update the speed of the winner, I'll also update my label as 1. I'll update my label as I, which denotes the ith car is having this much winner speed, that is the label car is having the winner speed. So at the end I will simply print the label of the winner car, the label of the winner. So let's run. So we got 13213, which is matching with the expected output. So let's submit. Accepted. So I want everyone to check this code if your logic is wrong anywhere. So let's start with the next question. Let's try to read the problem statement. An array B of length m is said to be good if no two elements from different indices sum to 4, and that is B is good if for every pair ij which is satisfying this, and also B of I plus B of j is not equals to 4. And also it is mentioned that you are given an array A of length n such that the array elements will be in between 1 to 3. That means A of I belongs to either 1 or 2 or 3. So the array elements will be either 1 or 2 or 3. And you would like to make we need to make this given array into a good array. And to achieve this, you can repeatedly choose a single element of A and we can delete it. That means let's say my array is 1 to 1, 1 to 4, sorry 1 to 3. So if this is my array A, in one operation I can choose any element and delete it from the array. This is what is mentioned till now. And let's try to read the remaining problem statement. So what's the minimum number of deletions needed to make this as the good array? And what is the property of the good array? What is the property of the good array? So there should not be any pair I comma j such that A of I plus A of j is equals to 4, right? So if you want to tell an array is good, it should satisfy this condition. So if I take this array, is this array a good array? No, right? Why? Because if you take these two elements, if you take either these two elements or these two elements or these two elements, the sum is 4. But our property of good array is the sum should not be 4. So in order to do this, what we can remove? Either we can remove this one, that is one case, or else we can simply remove this 3 from the array. Now if we remove this 3, now my array will become this, right? A is 1, 2, 1, 1 and 2. Now still, is this array a good array? No, right? Because we are having 2 plus 2. So if we delete this, or let's delete this, we can delete any one of them. So if we delete this, my array will become 1, 1, 1 and 2. Now for this array, is there any pair I comma j such that A of I plus A of j equal to 4? If you take this pair, what is the sum? 2. If you take this, again 2, and if you take this pair, 3. So whatever pair we take, the sum of that pair will not be 4. So now we can assume this as my good array. So I hope everyone is clear with the question. So let's try to read the input format. So the first line of input will contain a single integer t, which denotes the number of test cases, which is nothing but this. We are having 4 test cases, and each test case contains 2 lines of input. So this is first, second, third and fourth, 4 test cases. So the first line of each test case contains a single integer n, the length of the array, and the second line contains n space separated integers a1 to an. These are the elements of the array. And what we need to print? For each test case, output on a new line the answer. New line, the answer is the minimum number of elements, element deletions needed to make A as a good array. So if we consider the first input 1, 2 and 2, we can delete either this or this. So if we delete this, my array will become 1, 2 and it is a good array. So how many deletions did we make in order to make this array into a good array? Only 1. So my output is 1. And if we take the last input, which is 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, how many deletions should we make? This is the first test case and this is the fourth test case. So if this is my array A, how many deletions should I make in order to make this A as a good array? So basically we have this pair which sums to 4, and we also have this pair which sums to 4, and we also have this pair which sums to 4. So now what is the minimal way to decrease the deletions? So if we delete this 3, then still there exists one more pair with 3, right? So what can be optimal? If we simply delete this one, then these 2 3s is not making any pair, right? So now since I want the minimum number of deletions, I will simply delete this one such that this pair will be lost and this pair will be lost. Clear? And also these 2 2s are making a pair, right? I'll delete 1 2. So in total how many deletions are we making? This is the first deletion and this is the second deletion. So that is why my output is 2. So I hope everyone is clear with the problem statement, input and output. So now I want you to pause the video, try to understand this sample input, take few more test cases and try to build a logic first. I hope you have already figured out the logic. So what can be our logic? So if we observe, in order to get sum as 4, since my array contains, or let me move to the next slide. So in order to get sum as 4, since my array contains, since my A of I belongs only to 1, 2, 3, what are all possible pairs I can form to get sum as 4? Only 2 pairs, right? Either 1 plus 3 or 2 plus 2. There are no other pairs. So now I want to delete numbers from the array such that the array should be a good array. Good array means no 2 elements, sum should not be equal to 4. So if I take 1 1, 3 1 1 1, 2 1 1 1, if this is my array, what is the best possible way? If we simply delete this 3, then the array will be good array, right? But why are we deleting this 3? Because of this. Because 1 plus 3 gives us 4. Because of this 3 and one of these ones, I'll get 4. And if we want to keep this 3 in our array, then we need to delete all these ones, right? But this is not optimal because we need to delete the minimum number of elements. So our choice is we can simply delete this 3. So this is first scenario. Second scenario is, what if I have 3 3 1 3 1 3 3 2 3 3. Now in this case, what will you do? So this one may map with this 3 or this 3 or this 3 or any 3's, right? And also same applies for this one, same applies for this one. Since we want to delete the minimum number of operations, since we want to perform minimum number of operations, so what is the best optimal way to delete the elements from the array in order to make this array to good array? We can simply delete these ones, because there are how many 3's in the array? There are 7 3's. We are having 7 3's and we are having 2 1's. We are having 7 3's and we are having 2 1's. So since 3 and 1 is making a pair which sums to be 4, we can delete either all these ones or we can delete all these 7's. Sorry, we can delete all these 7 3's. But since we want the minimum number of deletions, we choose this option. So which is exactly what we are doing here as well. How many 1's do we have here? How many 1's do we have here? We have 7 8 1's. We are having 8 1's. And how many 3's? We are having only 1 3. So either we can delete all these 3's or we can delete all these ones. But since we want to delete minimum number of elements, we will simply delete this. We will simply delete 1 3. So this is for the first scenario. And for the second scenario, for this scenario, let's say I am having this as this is my array. These are my array elements. These are my array elements. Now, if you observe, if you want to apply the first scenario, we can simply delete this 3, right? Because number of 3's is minimum when compared to number of 1's. So I'll simply delete this minimum. And what else? This is forming a pair which sums to 4, and this is forming to a pair which sum to 4. So if we simply delete this 2, is that sufficient? No, right? If we simply delete this 2, again this 2 and this 2 again makes a pair. So what is the best optimal way? In order to make array as good, we need to maintain only 1 2 in the array. Because if we are having 2 2's, then it sums to 4 and it will not be a good array. So if there are multiple 2's, in the array, we need to delete all the 2's except 1 2. I hope everyone is clear now. So now whoever is unable to figure out the logic, I am sure that you are okay with the logic part. So basically what we need to do, we need to maintain count of 1's, we need to maintain count of 2's, and we need to maintain count of 3's. So let's say my count of 1 is x, count of 2 is y, and count of 3 is z. So now among these three counts, what we need to do in order to make the array into good array? So either we can eliminate all these ones or we need to eliminate all these 3's. That is, either we can eliminate x or we can eliminate z. But what should we eliminate? So it depends on whichever is minimum, that many 1's or that many 3's we will eliminate. And also same with 2. So if you are having more than 1 2, if the count of 2 is greater than 1, we need to remove all the remaining 2's, right? That means if my value of z is 5, I need to place only 1 2 in the array and delete all the remaining 2's. Yes or no? And if my value of z is 0, I should not do anything. If my value of z is 1, I I should not do anything. If my value of z is 2, how many 2's should I delete? How many 2's should I delete? I need to delete 1 2 here and so on, right? So basically we need to simply do y minus 1. We need to delete y minus 1 number of 2's. And x and y's already you know. We need to delete either x or z, whichever is minimum. So I hope now we are more clear with the logic. Make a note of this entire logic and try to convert this logic into code. So let's code it up. So let's read the input part. The first line of input contains t, denotes the number of test cases, and let's loop for t times, and for every test case let's read the value of n, which denotes the size of the array, and followed by array elements. And after reading the array elements, what we need to do? We need to count ones, we need to count twos, and we need to count threes, right? So I'll represent my count of ones with x, and I'll represent my count of twos with y, and I'll represent my count of threes with z. So again I iterate on the array, and if my array element is equals to 1, I'll increment my x. Else if my array element is equals to 2, I'll increment my y. Else I'll increment my z. So now after this for loop, I'm having count of x, count of y's, and count of z, which is nothing but count of ones, count of twos, and count of threes. Now let's say number of deletions. Number of deletions equal to 0. So in total, how many deletions should we make? Either we need to delete all ones or we need to delete all threes, right? So let's say deletions equal to deletions plus, either we need to delete all ones or all threes, either x or z, whichever is minimum we need to delete them. So I'm simply taking minimum of count of ones and count of threes. And what else should we delete? We should also delete twos, right? So if count of 2, and in this entire code, where are we storing count of twos? In y. So if y is greater than 1, we need to remove all the remaining y's, right? So deletions equal to deletions plus y minus 1. We are deleting all the twos except 1, and at the end we will simply print the minimum number of deletions required, which is nothing but deletions. So let's try to run. So we need to get 2, we are getting 2012, but we need to get 1012. So let's check where our code is going wrong. So here, so if we see in this code, what is going wrong? So let's try to go line by line. So till this part, we are counting number of ones in x, number of twos in y, number of threes in z. So, and we need to take minimum of ones and threes. So in x we are having count of ones, and in y we are having count of twos, but we need count of threes, so it should be z. So now let's try to run. So 1012, let's submit. Yes, accepted. So if you want, you can take a screenshot of this code. Okay, let's move to the next question. Let's try to read the problem statement. You are given an array A of length n as well as an integer x, and array indexes starts from 1 to n. So x is said to be separated if there exists at least one index I, such that a of I is less than x and a of I plus 1 is greater than x, or vice versa. A of I is greater than x or a of I plus 1 is less than x. And in simple terms, that is, x is said to be separated if array A contains a pair of adjacent elements with one of them being strictly less than x and other being strictly larger than x. So that is, if my array is this 2, 7, 5, and let's say my value of x is 3. So if I see here, these two are adjacent elements, right? These two are my adjacent elements in the array. So among this entire array, these two are my adjacent elements. And now my value of x is 3. So here 3 is greater than 2 and less than 7. So I can say this x can be separated from this array. I hope now you understood what exactly is this meant by. So let's try to read the next problem statement. You can freely arrange the elements of A however you like. That means if this is my array, I can arrange 2, 5, 7, I can arrange 7, 2, 5, I can arrange 7, 5, 2, I can rearrange the array in any manner. So what we need to find out is it possible to make x not separated? Is it possible to make x not separated? So let's try to look at the input format and have a better understanding of this question. So here, if we are looking at the input format, the first line contains a single integer t which denotes the number of test cases, and each test case consists of 2 lines of input. So this is first, second and third, 3 test cases, and the first line of each test case contains 2 space separated integers n and x. So this is n and this is x, followed by n elements. So we are clear with the input format, and check what is the output format. So for the output format, for each test case we need to output either yes or no. That is, we need to print yes if a valid rearrangement exists, otherwise we need to print no. So let's take the first example, 1, 5, 2 and 4. And what is my value of x? My value of x is 4. Now is it possible to not separate x from this array? If it is possible to not separate x from this array, we need to print yes. So if we take the exact same array, which is 1, 5, 4 2 given in the question, do we have any pair such that this condition satisfies? That is, a of I must be less than x and a of I plus 1 must be greater than x, or a of I must be greater than x or a of I plus 1 is less than x. Do we have any pair which satisfies this condition? We have read, if we take this pair, 4 is less than 1, 4 is greater than 1 and 4 is less than 5. So here x can be separated. If we are taking this rearrangement, we can separate x, but what is our agenda? We need to rearrange this array such that x should not be separated from the array. So do we have any such rearrangement? So if we rearrangement this array into like this, let's say my array becomes 1, 4, 5 and 2. If I am changing my array into this, now do I have any 2 adjacent pairs such that x can be separated? Still we are having, right? Still we are having this pair, that is 5 is greater than 4 and 4 is greater than 2, which is satisfying this condition. So even this pair is also not valid. But on the other hand, if I take this arrangement, that is 1, 2, 4 and 5, if I take this arrangement, what happens? So if I take this pair, I cannot separate x because both these values are less than x. If I take this pair, again I cannot separate because this is exactly equal to x. And if I take this pair, again I cannot separate because this is exactly equal to s. So here I am having a rearrangement from the given array such that x cannot be separated. So my output should be yes. So if you look at the second test case, what is the second test case? The second test case is 1, 5, 2, 4. Again the second test case we are having the same array, but the value of x is 3. So here let's try few possibilities. So let's take the same array. Let's take 1, 5, 2, 4. If we take 1, 5, 2, 4, is it possible to not separate x from this? No, right? Because if you are taking this pair, 1 is less than 3 and 3 is less than 5. So for this pair we can separate the x. If we take this possibility, can we separate the x? Yes, again we can separate because of this pair, because of either this pair or this pair or this pair. We can take any pair and we can separate this x. Yes or no? And can we separate from this? Again yes, right? Because of this pair, because 2 is less than 3 and 3 is less than 4. So again here also we can separate x. So what we can do? How can we build a logic? So I want you to repeat. Okay, first let's try what will be the output for this. So for the first one we understood that the output is yes, but what about the second test case? For this we are able to separate. Again for this we are able to separate. Again even for this we are able to separate, right? So do we have any rearrangement such that I cannot separate my x? So let's try one more possibility. Let's take 5, 1, 4 and 2. If we take this possibility, can we separate the x? Can we separate x? Still we can separate x, right? Because of either this pair or this pair or this pair. That is, we can either choose this pair where 1 is less than 3 and 3 is less than 4. I can choose this pair because 5 is greater than 3 and 3 is greater than 1. And I can choose this pair because 4 is greater than 3 and 3 is greater than 2. So either any pair I can choose, I am able to separate my x. Now, is there any way such that I cannot separate my x? No, because we have already tried 4 cases. So even if we try to make more rearrangements in the array, we'll always be able to separate 3 from this array. So that is the reason why, since we are able to separate this 3 for all the rearrangements of the array, my answer will be no. I hope you are clear with the output and the input and the question. So now try to build a logic on this. So what can we figure out? So if my array is, so let's take one more example for better understanding. So if my x is 15 and let's say my array elements are 2, -5, 7, 4, 10, 12, 14. So if my array is this and my value of x is this and my value of x is 15, can I separate this x from this array? I can rearrange the array in any way, right? But can I separate this x from this array? So in order to separate this x from this array, what is the condition? I should have one element which is less than x and I should have one element which is greater than x. That is, a of I should be less than x and a of I plus 1 should be greater than x, or vice versa. So this should be there. In order to be there, I need to have at least one element which is less than x and one element greater than x, right? So all these elements are less than x. All these elements are less than x. I don't have even a single element which is greater than x. So in that case, what we need to do? Not possible, right? So there is no possible way to separate my x. So my output is yes. On the same way, what if my x is minus 100? What if my x is minus 100? So for the first case, my value of x is 15. Let's say my another x is minus 100. Again, in order to separate this x from this array, one element from the array should be greater than x and one element from the array should be less than x. Sorry, one element from the array should be less than x and one element from the array should be greater than x. But if you see, all these elements are greater than this x. But we also need one element which is less than x. So even in this case, my output is yes. So what did we figure out till now? If all the elements in the array is greater than x or all the elements in the array are less than x, we need to print yes. This is one scenario which we find out. So do we have any other cases where we can print yes? We already seen, right? In the previous example, for the first scenario, 1524 and my x value is 4. Even in this case, we are able to separate and we printed yes. So how can we build a logic for that particular examples, for those kind of examples? So if all elements are greater than x or if all elements are less than x, our answer is straightforward. We can simply print yes. But what about the remaining scenarios? So if we see, let's take one more example. So if my array elements are 2, 7, 5, 4, 8, 9, and let's say my value of x is 3. So if my value of x is 3, in order to separate x, what should I do? If I want to separate x, I need to put two elements together. From the array such that one is less than 3, such that this element is less than 3 and this element is greater than 3. And these elements can be anything, right? These elements can be anything. Just I need one pair of adjacent elements such that I can separate x. But how can we do this? So if these are my lesser elements and if these are my greater elements, then of course if I am having at least one element which is less than 3 and if I am having at least one element greater than 3, then this condition will always be true, right? Wherever we place, this condition always be true. So either if I place all lesser elements here or all greater elements here or all lesser elements here or all greater elements here, I'll be having at least one pair, right? Because let's say I'm having 10 elements in the array, my value of n is 10, and I'm having 5 elements which is less than x and 5 elements which is greater than x. So if I place these 5 or these 5 any order, somewhere two elements will be adjacent to each other such that one element will be less than x and one element will be greater than x. Yes or no? That means either if I group all less than 3 elements to one group and all greater than 3 elements to one group, and if I simply concatenate them, because since it is array we need to place all of them together, right? If I place my elements like this, here these two adjacent elements will be again forming a pair which is less than x and greater than x. So if I don't want to separate x, I can put all lesser elements here and all greater elements here, and I need to put something here, right? Such that these two groups will not form a pair. These two groups will not form a valid pair. But what can I keep here? Can I keep x itself? That is, if my x is 4 here, in the question, if my x is 4, let's say this is group A, where group A belongs all the elements less than 4 and group B belongs all the elements greater than 4. Now if I place 4 here, that is I am placing 2 in group A and I am placing 5, 7, 8, 9 in group B. So here if I don't have this 4, let's assume I don't have this 4. Now if I don't have that 4, no matter what, these elements cannot be rearranged, right? I mean, these elements cannot be rearranged such that we cannot separate x. So any rearrangement we choose, we will be able to separate the given x. So in order to not separate x, that is, we need to keep a 4 here. That is, if the input contains 4 and if group A belongs all elements less than 4 and group B belongs all elements greater than 4, if we keep 4 here, then will be having any pair? No, right? That is, if we take this kind of rearrangement, from the given array, we will be having no 2 adjacent elements which will be strictly less than x and which will be strictly greater than x. Yes or no? So even in this case, we can print yes. So I hope you are clear with the logic now. That is, the first scenario is either if all elements are greater than x, we need to print yes. Either if all elements are less than x, we need to print yes. And also, if we are able to group our elements like this, even then we can print yes. But how we are able to tell? How can we tell we can group like this? How can we tell we can group like this? It's simple, right? We can simply count number of elements which belongs to group A, number of elements which belong to group B. That means we need to count number of elements. We need to count number of elements less than x. We need to count number of elements greater than x, and also we need to count number of elements equal to x. If you are having these 3 counts, in the previous case, this scenario is nothing but all the elements greater than x and all the elements less than x. So if you are having these 3 counts, let's assume this is x, this is y, this is z. So in order to tell the first scenario, all the elements are less than x means x is equals to n. Right? If either x is equals to n, we can print yes, or if y is equal to n, we can print yes. Also, this kind of rearrangement, even here we can print yes. But how can we write the condition for this? That means group A should belong to all the elements which are less than x and group B should belong to all the elements which are greater than x. But we need to have this 4 in the given array. This 4 is nothing but equal to x. So either if this condition or this condition, or if z is equals to 1. So if one of them is true, we can simply print yes. Otherwise we need to print no. I hope you are now more clear with the logic. Try to make your notes, try to understand by taking few more examples, and try to convert this logic into code. Let's code it up. So first step, we need to read the number of test cases, and let's loop for t times, and let's read the value of n, and let's read the value of x, and let's declare an array of size n, and let's read the array elements. So after reading the array elements, what we need to do, we need to count the number of elements less than x, number of elements greater than x, and number of elements equal to x. So let's say my x denotes the number of, or let's say my A denotes the number of elements which are less than x, my B denotes number of elements which are greater than x, and my C denotes number of elements equal to x. So let's again iterate on the array, and if my current element is less than x, I'll increment my a. Else if my current element is greater than x, I'll increment my b. Else I'll increment my c. Now in what all cases I can print yes? So either if all the elements are less than x. All the elements are less than x means how can we write the condition? So a is holding the number of elements which are less than x, right? So if the count of less than element is n, we can print yes. Or if all the elements are greater than x, we can print yes. That is, if b is equals to n, we can print yes. Or if there exists at least one element which is equals to s, even in that case we can print yes. So either if c is greater than or equals to 1, even in this case I can print yes. So system.out.println, even in this case I can print yes, otherwise I need to print no. Let's run. Okay, we are having error. Okay, we are having scanner SC. Okay, we got yes, no, yes. The sample input output passed. Let's try to submit. Yes, correct answer. So I hope you are clear with everything, the input part, the logic part, and the logic to code conversion part as well. I want you to make a note of this. That's it for the video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such content. See you in the next video.